I grew up in a small Ohio town with a terrifying secret. Never step outside after dark. I never should have opened that door. The early evening air felt thick. It was the kind of cold that crawled under your skin, freezing your breath into visible puffs. My small Ohio town held secrets that danced in the shadows, lurking just out of sight, waiting to ensnare the careless. Each day echoed the same humdrum routine. I would sit on my porch, sipping lemonade, while laughter and chatter filled the air. But come nightfall, a wave of dread washed over me. The street lamps flickered like they were afraid of the darkness that swallowed the streets whole. My friends warned me, "Don't go out after dark," they whispered. "It's not safe." I'd laugh it off until now. The chill in the air wasn't just the typical Ohio winter. It whispered. I could hear it. A soft sigh, slithering through the trees, curling around my spine. Shadows stretched longer, thicker, as if they had lives of their own. I felt their weight pressing down, dark tendrils creeping towards me. Strange noises echoed from nowhere. A branch snapped. A low growl escaped from the depths of the woods bordering the town. My heart raced. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to just ignore the shivers creeping up my arms. When I opened them, something shifted in the distance. A figure? Or just my imagination playing tricks? They said the old Miller house at the end of the street held stories of the forgotten ghostly figures flitting through windows, without any light behind their eyes. The air around it was always colder. I could feel it prickling at my skin even now, a warning radiating from the darkened doorway. My hands trembled as I stepped away, but my curiosity clawed its way back. I shouldn't have gone near that house. I'd heard the legends, but standing at its threshold, staring into the abyss of that darkened entrance, every instinct screamed at me to run, to heed the warnings. But what was that? A soft tug, an almost gentle whisper beckoning me closer? And then, the shadow moved. Unearthly stillness followed, caging my breath in a vice. I tried to scream, but the sound lodged in my throat, choking me. The door behind me slammed shut, locking me in a silence so profound. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I was never supposed to open that door. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness inside the Miller house enveloped me like a shroud, every breath turning into a struggle against the oncoming dread. The air smelled of decay, dampness mixing with something almost metallic. As I stood paralyzed at the threshold, the silhouette at the far end of the hall wavered and flickered, a cruel trick of the shadows. I told myself, refusing to let the fear take root in my mind. Suddenly, a cold breeze surged through the entryway, swirling around me like a sentient wispy creature. My heart thundered as the light from the dying sun faded, replaced by an oppressive black that seemed to swell within the house itself. I forced my legs to move, staggering backward until I was almost outside, but my pulse quickened as I realized I couldn't see the doorstep anymore. It had vanished beneath an engulfing darkness. The figure at the end of the hallway grew larger as I squinted, desperate to discern what it was. Shadows peeled away from its form, revealing a gaunt face limned in an unnatural glow. Wispy hair floated around its head, defying gravity, and hollow eyes fueled a bottomless pit of terror deep in my bones. It tilted its head as if pondering my presence, a grotesque imitation of curiosity. "Help us," it rasped, the voice unrecognizable yet familiar, twisting through the air like smoke. It beckoned for me, the outstretched fingers long and skeletal, painted with the residue of ages past. I felt warmth bleed from my chest as terror coiled in my lungs. I wasn't alone. The whispers of troubled souls crawled through the empty spaces in the house, layered like ghostly echoes, soaked with desire and longing for freedom. I stumbled back, slipping on the wooden floor, but the door swung open effortlessly behind me, as if the very house itself urged me to escape. I was met with a rush of frigid air, a sense of safety pulling me outward. I could be chosen to run, to flee the horror that fed on my dread, but an unseen force held my gaze to the apparition. "No, you have to listen," it hissed, and then the walls around me quaked with a low vibration, as if the home was angry at my hesitation. I felt it, an unsettling presence, like angry spirits swirling just beyond my walls. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed, drowning out my thoughts. "Stay with us," they cried in unison, coming not from the figure, but from the very rafters. I could feel the air thicken, pressing against my skin, suffocating in its intensity. Desperation gripped my heart. I yanked my gaze away, desperate to escape the imposing weight of their pleading. But the darkness shifted. The house shuddered, a terrible groan echoed through the hallways, as if protesting my indecision. I darted for the door, but then I heard the crunch of footsteps behind me, too heavy for shadows. The figure was no longer alone. They were gathering, emerging in a throng that distorted the air between us. With horror, I realized it wasn't just one soul seeking to claim me. They surged toward me, their forms twisting and contorting, facial features blending into something monstrous yet sorrowful. A mass of despair that twisted around my trembling body. My heart thudded as I nearly screamed, the chilling realization dawning. Every warning felt in the townsfolk's hushed tones suddenly became terrible truth. And then, a harsh, piercing toll echoed through the air, a distant bell shattering the chorus of their cries. My breath caught in my throat as disoriented silence fell over the house, freezing the advancing figures mid-motion. For just a moment, the shadows receded, hissing like a drawn breath. But as I steadied myself, a cold touch grazed my shoulder. Its embrace was a warning, drawing me closer. I turned quickly, but before I could react, a white-hot pain seared through my arm. I glanced down to see 5 long lines etched into my skin, where no fingers had touched before. Staggering backward, the world spun, twisting in on itself. I was drawn toward the heart of the house, unable to fight against the magnetic pull of the darkness. And just as I thought I'd lost grip on reality, the unearthly shrieks resumed, a chaotic symphony that echoed against the walls of my mind. As my vision blurred and I felt the icy grip of dread tightening around my heart, I realized I had stumbled onto a path I couldn't turn back from. My flesh pulsed in response to ancient calls, and I discovered too late that, even in the depths of fear, curiosity was a heavy burden to bear. The last thing I saw was a wide-open door to the next room, flooded with a sickly glow. A chorus of laughter erupted from the darkness beyond before I was pulled into the void, thrust into a realm I never asked to enter. My scream, now a lasting echo lost in the horrid embrace of a new nightmare. The room I was thrust into was steeped in a shadowy fog, thick and permeating my senses. The sickly glow bathed everything in an otherworldly hue, displacing reality and creating a disconcerting panorama of warped shapes and shifting outlines. I staggered forward, the remnants of my scream clawing at my throat as the laughter danced eerily around me, bouncing from the walls and feeding on my growing dread. The room was vast but claustrophobic, closing in as if it were alive, each pulse of the light a heartbeat echoing of sinister intentions. In one corner, a tarnished mirror was framed in derelict with it seemed to twist and writhe like the earnest souls I had fled, faces once familiar, now grotesque parodies of flesh writhing in agony. I caught my reflection splintered in the glass, distorted alongside the horror that grinned back at me. "Help us!" they cried again, echoes of my own thoughts, tainted by the despair threading through the very fabric of the room. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to drown out the voices, but they seeped in through the cracks of my mind. The laughter grew louder, morphing into a shuffle of footsteps. I spun, eyes wide as shadows flitted across my peripheral vision, zigzagging like broken limbs taken by the wind. From the darkened corners, figures emerged, more than just tortured souls. They were remnants of those who had vanished from the small town, faces half-formed and eyes wide with understanding of their own doom. I recognized the town's librarian, the school janitor, even a distant cousin lost to the woods years ago. Their mouths moved, silently pleading, while their bodies fell into awkward, jerky motions that mimicked the echoes of their past lives. Bonded to an unseen puppet master, I backed into the wall, hands trailing along the cold, damp surface until I felt the fabric of the wallpaper peeling beneath my fingers. The air became thicker, wrapping around me, choking the fright from my lungs as I gasped for breath. Just as I turned to consider my escape, the figures sputtered, morphing as one with the floor beneath me. Lines of desperation twisted over their limbs like veins beneath my skin. "Join us," the librarian whispered, her voice dripping with hopeless allure, as she stretched her bony fingers toward me. Beckoning me closer, I faltered, drawn to the pull of their agony, the need to become part of their grotesque symphony echoing deep within me. My thoughts grew heavy, muddled, a thick fog clouding my mind as images of their fate replayed with exquisite detail: the faded photos, the missing posters, the mournful faces of the townsfolk left behind. In the center of the room, a spectral figure formed, coalescing from the shadows as it approached me slowly. It was the same entity that had called out to me from the hallway, its face now clearer but equally haunting. The hollow eyes fixed on mine, pleading yet predatory. "Don't fear," it rasped. "The darkness is where you belong." Then it lunged at me, an unfurling of shadow that enveloped me in a flurry of cold dampness as I felt a jolt of electricity ignite in my veins. The laughter escalated into a cacophony, slashing at the air, while the walls pulsated like a heart beating out a frantic rhythm of madness. I grasped at the air, panic consuming me as I turned on my heel, racing toward the mirror. If I could just break through, just find a way out. But as I reached the spiraled glass, the surface shimmered with grotesque reflections. My hand met an invisible barrier, sprawling memories flaring to life. I saw my mother's face flash, serene and loving, before distorting into something unrecognizable. A scream torn from my throat merged with the collective wails around me, engulfing the AI art. As I spun back in despair, the silhouettes were closer now, their outstretched hands longing to draw me into their unholy realm. The spectral figure grinned, sharp teeth glinting in the impending darkness, while the laughter reached a fever pitch, shattering every last vestige of hope. And just as it felt like the weight of the room was about to crush me utterly, the ground beneath my feet trembled violently, cracks spider-webbing outward as a deep rumble echoed throughout. Light exploded searingly bright from the fractured floorboards beneath me, and in what could only be described as supernatural fury, the dark entities recoiled, their expressions shifting from euphoria to terror in an instant. But it was too late. I could feel the splintering of reality as the mirror shattered and jagged shards of glass exploded outward toward me, each fragment reflecting the horrifying faces of the lost souls now screaming in unison, urging me to join them. A sharp cry of my name echoed through the chaos, a voice I recognized immediately, filled with both grief and hope. "Run. You need to get out." Before I could process the command, a force surged through the shattered mirror, pulling me toward the depths of the darkness where half-recognized faces flickered in horror. And at that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting for my very soul. The world and its terrors spiraled into oblivion, and as it dissipated, I vanished into a blinding white light, leaving behind the laughter, leaving behind the horror. But as the light faded, I felt a colder darkness begin to curl around me anew. I stood in a familiar place, barely breathing, confronted again by the very doorstep I had tried to escape. The Miller house loomed ahead, shadows creeping out from the doorframe like skeletal fingers, and the whispers began to emerge once more. "Join us." I froze, horror knotting in my gut, as I took one step back. Behind me, the door swung wide, the faces of lost souls rushing forth to reclaim what had been taken from them, their cries a chilling harmony of betrayal. I blinked and felt the air thicken as the darkness enveloped me, a tightening squeeze that stripped away my resolve. For I understood now, no matter how far I ran, no matter how deep I fell into the night, the Miller house would always be waiting for my return. The whispers wrapped around me like a sinister embrace, darting through the air with the ferocity of a storm. "Join us," they repeated, each syllable grating against my senses. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I felt the chill of the threshold corrupting the warmth of my breath. The town felt alive, its atmosphere thick with the stench of despair, each crack in the pavement seemingly whispering tales of those lost to the encroaching shadows that I turned. My mind struggled to comprehend where to flee as the ghastly figures poured from the Miller house. Their hollow faces distorted with both longing and rage, their gestures frantic, as if I were their only hope. "You belong with us. You've always belonged," the librarian intoned again, her voice slithering into my mind, weaving strands of dread that I took off at a sprint, barely conscious of my path, ignoring the echoes of the past rising behind me. The air grew heavy, pulling at my legs, urging me to slow down, to surrender. Shadows twisted through the trees lining the street, stretching impossibly long as they flicked and twisted like serpents. Bare, twisted branches clawed at my clothing, threatening to trip me into the wailing depths of despair. "I've escaped you once," I gasped, voice barely breaking through the clamor of the whispers trailing behind me. Yet I felt the truth of their desires seep into my psyche, the pull of unity with the forsaken. Did I truly escape? Or was I being drawn back to the inevitable? Just ahead, the fluorescent glow of a street lamp flickered erratically, casting errant patches of light that intermittently revealed and concealed the night as horrors. I could hear them, the lost souls, reviving their blurred memories, a chorus of names uttered with longing and accusatory rage. The faint echoes of their laughter twisted disconcertingly into grotesque howls that as I neared the lamp, it sputtered violently, threatening to extinguish. I skidded to a halt, my breath shuddering in my throat as I peered into the darkness beyond, where the crumbling houses lined the assertive shadows. Distant laughter cut through the air, familiar yet unnerving. It twisted my stomach, a queasy reminder of forgotten times with friends who had vanished into the night, with faces just beyond recognition. Turning back toward the Miller house felt like stepping deeper into hellish maw, but turning away also felt like condemning myself. The voices were relentless, distorting the very landscape of the memory. "Your choice, your destiny," they echoed, blaring through the void. I broke through a veil of trees, splintering branches scratching at my skin, when suddenly a figure lurched forth from the shadows. Startled, I tripped, landing heavily on the ground, my palms scraping against shattered leaves and dirt. My eyes shot up, breath caught in my throat as I recognized the form before me, one of my childhood friends. Amanda. Her face sunken and devoid of color, lost in a haze of sorrow. "Help me," she breathed, the words barely rising above a whisper, yet they wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud. "Amanda, what happened? Where is everyone?" I choked out, desperate for clarity amid chaos. "Don't listen to them," she gasped. "They want you to join, to forget. They're lying." Her eyes sparkled with a flicker of hope, but that flame danced precariously, threatening to extinguish in the next breath. I grabbed her hand, but as I pulled her toward me, she shimmered like a mirage, her figure flickering, wavering like a candle caught in the wind. "No," I cried, but her hand slipped from my grip, and she staggered back with a rogue shadow plunging forth, melding her once again into the void. Stricken with terror, I reached out into the darkness, begging for answers I feared I already knew. But only the whispers returned, aggressively intoxicating. I sprinted onward, fully aware that I may have become one of them, the burden of the choice I had made echoing in my footsteps. Suddenly, I felt hands grasping at the edges of my being. Shadows pulled me into the night. I wrenched away, my lungs screaming for a breath that felt lost in the rift between realities. "No, I refuse," I cried, letting the desperation surge through my body. But the shadows around me laughed again, and the ground began to quake. Before I could process what was happening, the earth cracked open before me, a deep chasm splitting down the center of the street, exhaling pressure and darkness that engulfed me wholly. "Join us," the chorus wailed as I wavered at the edge, facing the abyss that beckoned with the allure of oblivion. And it was then that I saw them, the faces of the lost, twisted together in the darkness, reaching toward me with pleading agony. "We need you," they clamored, their voices congealing into an unholy anthem. "Fall into the void," the void thrummed ominously, awaiting my response, and with that realization, the ground beneath me gave way. I felt gravity jerk me down, the faces melding together in a single scream as the world blurred and all I knew began to unravel. And in that instant, just as darkness swallowed me whole, I remembered the words I had once heard, a warning passed down through the whispers of the town. Once you're called, there's no way back. Then, a flash of light exploded from the center of the abyss, blinding in its intensity, igniting the fear that encased me in the dark. Would this be the end, or merely the beginning? The brilliance faded as quickly as it came, leaving me suspended in an alien darkness that felt alive. It was a void not simply devoid of light, but rich with a tension that vibrated against my skin like a plucked string, thrumming with unrestrained energy. I felt weightless, and yet, the pull of despair anchored me, an invisible rope beckoning me to submit to the invitation of the shadows below. Join us, the voices implored again, but now they peppered their cadence with a chilling nostalgia, as if echoing memories I hadn't yet forgotten. Mesmerized, I drifted among phantoms of laughter and tears that skipped through my consciousness, eclipsing reality with suffocating longing. The fear I had felt moments before twisted into an insistent yearning, a desire to rest among these familiar souls that I believed I loved and lost. That it was then I realized I was not falling anymore, but standing in a vast, moonless expanse beyond comprehension. The ground felt pulsating beneath me like a heart beating deeper into the earth. And yet from the deep, dark horizon, silhouettes emerged, figures drawn from the shadows, their contours blurred and roiling like smoke. They came closer, silhouettes morphing into more defined features, twisting in a morbid dance. Their eyes glinted with an unsettling brightness, begging for connection, for understanding. A murmur rolled through the atmosphere, as if the very void around me was breathing them in, wrapping their outlines into songs of sorrow. You've always belonged with us, with me. It was a melody sweeter than the suffering that had preceded it, luring me to step closer, to reach out and touch the warmth of their ethereal forms. But lurking in the backdrop of this enigmatic gathering was a darker specter pulling at my attire, an icy grip that startled me into clarity. No! Stop! I instinctively yelled, my pulse pounding in rebellion against their dark embrace. In that moment, clarity flooded over my mind like bitter rain. These weren't friends or family. No, they were remnants of the town, uninhibited by death, cursed to exist in this in-between plane. Foolish mortal, hissed a voice that sliced through the ambient noise. From among the roiling figures, a woman stepped forward, her form far more tangible than the others. It was the librarian, her face a grotesque mask of familiar affection and chilling malice. You think you can resist the call? We have waited for you. We lured you back to this wretched place for a reason. I staggered back, a chilling recognition tightening in my throat. This was your trap all along. I screamed, memories of stolen nights and warnings simmering to the surface. The town had turned harvesters of souls, and she had been their silent overseer, luring me under the guise of innocence. Let me go. I don't belong here. But you do, she whispered, stepping closer, the darkness swirling around her like a caress. You've grown apart from them, haven to you? The outside world is a prison. We can offer you freedom. Let go of what chains you. Gesturing toward the figures, her smile slimmed into a terrifying crescent. They want you too. They need you. We've longed for renewal, someone from the so-called living to be part of this place. Around me, the whispers transformed into raucous laughter, their intent woven into the fabric of my memories, and I realized that every lost day, every tear shed in the shadows of my life, was a reminder. I had escaped this fate before, but they had never truly let me go. They had waited for me to return. The abyss shuddered with more intent, and the very darkness pooled around my feet, clinging with a force that threatened to engulf me. The figures pressed in closer, their hands reaching. Memories of laughter and love twisted anew, these moments embellished with a new urgency that nearly broke me. You felt it, the call. Join us. Live among the eternal. I was losing myself, lost in the surge of emotions and memories, the choice becoming blurred. Throwing my head back, I shrieked into the void. No, I will not be one of you. But my voice faltered, consumed by the silence that roared back with fervent disdain. In that moment, I caught sight of a single spirit, a flicker of devotion. Amanda. Her eyes shimmered above the chaos like twin stars caught in a tempest. "Fight it. You still have a choice," she screamed, her voice refracting through the murk, slicing a path through the howling madness around me. With that, clarity pierced through me, igniting a fire and ember of fortitude. I took a step back from the monstrous gravity pulling me in, the yearning voices growing frantic as I clawed backward. Suddenly, a chilling shriek erupted from the amalgamation of figures. The librarian's eyes burned with rage, a terrifying tempest stirring above us. "Foolish choice," she howled, and the faces twisted around me, morphing into the wailing lost souls no longer beckoning but now threatening. A scream filled my lungs as I spun away, desperation fueling every ounce of my being as I sprinted for the distant memory of light, hoping to escape the grip of eternity's dark allure. But just as I stumbled backward, I felt hands cold, clammy, and unforgiving surrounding me, dragging me back toward the void as the land quaked beneath me once more. Panic gnawed at my chest as I fought against the tide. With a final glance at Amanda's pleading gaze, I breathed heavily and shouted, "This ends now," and then I disappeared into the encroaching darkness, leaving only whispers behind, as profound and unholy as the void itself. Then, without warning, the ground erupted, and the edge of reality collapsed inward, and the last echoes of my resolve faded into an unending scream that painted the night sky. The scream was not mine. It was a chorus of voices, a cacophony of lost souls ripped from the void, spiraling around me as the fabric of reality tore at the seams. A blackened sky rained shadows that clutched at my limbs, dragging me deeper into the abyss. I gasped for breath, but the air felt thick, suffocating, drenched in despair. In the deluge of darkness, fleeting flashes of memory darted before my eyes, moments that once defined my existence. Birthday candles flickering in the winter wind, the laughter of childhood friends echoing down quiet streets, the warmth of a hug from Amanda that I could no longer muster. All of it transformed into a haunting melody, a reminder that the memories I cherished were chained to the figures reaching for me with twitching, skeletal fingers. "Join us," they whispered, a sound like rustling leaves, weaving through the cacophony of tormented cries. Their visage shifted rapidly, blending into each other, faces of people I had known, twisted with longing and despair. The librarian led them, half-draped in shadows, a ghostly promise hovering on her lips. "Why can't you taste it? The sweetness of salvation?" she hissed, her voice laced with the agony of countless forsaken. "We have all waited for you, just as you've waited for us. You are a beacon of hope for the forgotten." Her words wrapped around me like a noxious fog, and for a fleeting second, I felt a comfort within the madness. Without my conscious thought, I reached my hand toward the closest figure, a representation of everything I once knew. Just as my fingers brushed its spectral skin, it recoiled, a violent tremor shooting through its body. "No!" the figure shrieked, smothered in an wailing sound that twisted my stomach. "Do not let her in. Do not become one with them." The air shifted as shadows collided. The atmosphere vibrated with sheer terror, and the librarian recoiled as if struck. "Fool!" she raged, hands outstretched, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You think they want to save you? They want you lost like the others. Forever." The darkness quivered as if it had a mind of its own and grasped me tighter, threatening to suffocate my spirit. The ground pulsed and roared beneath me, a heartbeat of the infinite void that hungered. In the throes of palpable dread, I wrenched away my thoughts of fear and found the ember of defiance again, igniting a surge of power against the wave. "No!" I screamed, echoing the words of the figure who had warned me. "You will not take me." And just like that, the ground beneath me trembled violently as I was catapulted forward into a corridor of light that materialized from nowhere, casting shadows in uneven forms. The filtered glow beckoned me, promising salvation, a way out only further into the deception that shrouded this cursed town. With every ounce of willpower, I sprinted towards the illumination, the hands of the lost grasping at my back, fingers slipping away as I dashed forward. The echoes of their cries surged, twisting into haunting laughter that turned my blood to ice. "You cannot escape," they sang in unison, harmonizing with the mad whispers of the librarian growing ever closer. I stopped short in a vast room that appeared out of the swirling chaos, a library, familiar yet twisted, its shelves lined with books whose titles glared back at me like names on gravestones. The delicious smell of paper and ink warped into a rancid stench coursing with decay. Whispers chanted twisted truths, tales written in despair, urging me to face the horrors long buried. Borrowed memories collided against the air, revealing the tragic secrets etched within their pages. The faces from the shadows emerged in torment, etched in every line, every story each a cautionary tale of the lost, swallowing their hope, compelled by the cycle of darkness and despair. In the room's center stood an ornate table, the wooden surface marred by time, etched with symbols I did not recognize. Yet they called to me, spoke to me in a language that tangled my senses. As I approached, dread coursed through me, a realization dawning like a thunderclap. Each etching bore the name of those who had been lost, those claimed by the darkness. Etched among them in flowing script was my name. Suddenly, the room began to tilt, tilting as though reality itself was succumbing to the weight of my terror, and the icy grip returned, tightening around my heart. The librarian's ghastly visage appeared before me, eyes burning like coals, teeth bared in a rictus of glee. You will become another tale, another warning to this accursed town. You will be ours. The ground rumbled violently. Your story ends here, or perhaps just begins, she hissed as I stumbled back into the void, the library shattering into an array of spectral light and darkness, fragments of the truth swirling chaotically as I plummeted deeper. That's when I saw Amanda again, her figure illuminated with a brilliance meant to pierce the dark, the same light that enveloped me before. Fight! You must fight it! But the void was swallowing me alive, the laughter growing louder as the cold grip tightened around my mind. As shadows clawed toward me, consuming every last sight of light, a voice echoed through the chasm of dread, chilling me to my bones. We are the eternal darkness. We are waiting for you. And in that instant, I felt the pulse of despair resonate through me, a premonition that I had stepped beyond a threshold I may never escape, teetering on the precipice of becoming something that could never again return to the light, an unwritten warning among the histories lost in this wretched town. The darkness coiled around me, a suffocating shroud that whispered sweetly, promising unending confusion. I landed amidst the debris of shattered memories, fragments of a life I once knew, scattered across the crumbled tiles of what had been my sanctuary. Within this twisted space, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, the ominous foreboding stirring deep within, feeding off my fear. In the distance, the sound of pages rustling grew louder, and I realized the books that had once stood as silent witnesses were twisting, metamorphosing, creatures of ink and paper dancing in a grotesque ballet of horror. Their spines cracked and groaned, and amidst the cacophony, the librarian's voice echoed like a death knell. Every story has its end, but each end births a new beginning. As if summoned by her words, shadows slithered along the ground, inching toward me with sinister intent. The flickering light from the crumbling lampposts outside the library's windows flickered like dying stars, struggling against the encroaching darkness. I could feel specters breathing down my neck, the chill of their ethereal forms brushing against my skin, drawing closer, urging me to succumb. Join us! A chorus of lost spirits filled the air, their voices overlapping in a jarring discord that threatened to rend my sanity. Together we can rewrite the ending. Heart racing, I darted to a nearby window, but it pulsed with the same darkness outside. Beyond it lay nothing but a swirling void, an infinite abyss ready to swallow me whole. I turned back to the library, fear tangling with desperation. But the shelves were alive now, alive with wrath and resentment. Each title morphed into grotesque faces, lurching toward me with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, demanding to know what fate I would choose. Then I heard it, a soft, desperate whisper cutting through the bedlam. Help me. Please. Don't leave me behind. The plea was unmistakably Amanda's voice, though ragged and distorted, almost drowning in despair. My heart fractured, sending shards of fear piercing my soul. I had to find her. Amidst the horror, the one person who anchored me to my humanity could still be out there. Forget her. The librarian shouted, her voice a thunderclap against my thoughts. It's too late for you. Ignoring the threat, I barreled deeper into the library's hellscape, dodging shelves that swayed like marionettes. This was a labyrinth of torment, each corridor a reminder of the price of lost hope. The air thickened as if proving heavy with the weight of uncountable stories left untold, their whispers unsettling the fragments of my sanity. Why don't you let me in? I shouted, my own voice a wavering echo as if responding to a taunt. I grabbed a nearby book, its leather cover slick with moisture and dread, and opened the pages. What spilled forth were not letters but images, a corridor of darkened memories, of faces buried beneath layers of time, each more familiar than the last. There was Amanda, standing perfectly still, but her eyes were hollow, her mouth moving silently. Panic clawed at my throat as I desperately leafed through the pages, breath quickening. The library morphed around me, shifting, suffocating, as the specters demanded my surrender, hungry for a new tale to weave into their existence. Half a dozen feet away, the librarian's form solidified, now so close I could see the filmy remnants of the faces beneath her skin, mouths twisted in agony. The air buzzed with energy, pulsing with dark intent. Join them. Become one with the library, she hissed, extending a bony finger poised at the heart of the narrative. Then, amidst the chaos, the image of Amanda blinked, her features momentarily flickering back into focus. Her eyes were desperate, lost. Please help me, she pleaded again, and this time her voice cut through the madness. No, I cried out, shocked and raw. I won't let them take you. But as I lunged toward the heart of the library, whispers morphed into a deafening crescendo, a cacophony that tore my consciousness apart. The books trembled and surged around me, and in that instant, I stumbled, my fingers grasping at a volume caught in the grip of a malignant force. The moment my skin made contact, it burned as I was flooded with impressions of countless souls ensnared within these pages, screams and laughter eternally entwined in their narratives. The joy of reading twisted into a sinister romance. The library shifted, reshaping into a towering monolith of despair. Each spine a spine of the lost, each tale a sentence leading to their eternal doom. Join me, the librarian shrieked, a rapture of black delight sparking in her eyes. One last tale, my darling. One last chance to free yourself. As I turned to flee toward the last doorway, the world trembled, a vast maw separated with bricks and vine, threatening to swallow me, but I had to reach Amanda. I had to sever the threads binding her to this cursed place. With each step, shadows fractured, pulsating, erupting into shrill laughter that pulled at my mind. You think you can outrun fate? That you can rewrite history? They hollered. In that instant, I realized the truth. The library was not just a prison, but a gateway. I had uncovered vile truths buried in its pages, each one a potential liberation or a sentence to be written anew. But the question remained. Could I face the shadowed depths to save her? As the walls closed in, alarmingly alive, I glanced back one last time at the flickering page that connected me to my past. I'll come back for you, I shouted, the darkness shifting, hungry for my promise. Just as I turned to run, a roar echoed through the void, and a hand emerged from the shadows, long and skeletal, arms outstretched toward me. It was not the librarian. It wasn't a figure of despair at all. Amanda! I screamed, my voice torn from my throat as her visage unfolded before me. But her eyes were different now, no longer begging for help. They glinted with cruel intent, her mouth curling into a smile that felt like a blade. Don't run, my love, she intoned. You'll belong here just like me. And as I stumbled backward, the echo of her laughter melded with the shadows that swallowed the light, a cacophony that twisted my very soul. The crushing weight of dread sealed around me like a tomb as I understood. My fight for survival was only just beginning, and Amanda was no longer the savior I had hoped for. The darkness was patient, and I would soon be just another tale among the many that haunted this town. The cacophony faded into an eerie silence, leaving only the sound of my frantic heartbeat echoing in my ears. I could barely register the shifting shadows around me, but they felt heavier now, almost sentient in their pursuit. The oppressive gloom of the library seemed to swell, closing in as if the very walls were aware of my panic. "Amanda?" I whispered, the name curling like smoke in the foul air. But all that met me was the lingering chill of her sinister smile, now etched in my mind. She had transformed, metamorphosing into something far more malevolent than I could have ever imagined. I pressed my back against the cold, crumbling wall as I scanned the surroundings. What was meant to be a haven of knowledge had turned into a maze of horrors, twisting corridors unfurling like the gnarled roots of a tree, each turn a new chapter of agony waiting to ensnare me. In the distance, a flickering light beckoned, dim yet alive, promising something, anything, that could guide me out of this nightmare. As I stepped hesitantly towards the glow, the ground trembled beneath my feet. Echoes of whispers grew louder and more insistent, clamoring in a cacophony of anguish. The titles on nearby spines glowed with a malevolent vibrancy, each one a perverse invitation to turn back, to submit to the dread. "Do you really think you can escape?" they argued, their voices a chorus of despair. Books bury the truth beneath layers of fiction. Each page you turn is another step into their grasp. Ignoring them, I continued forward, every motion heavy with dread. My breath quickened as I reached the source of the light, a solitary lamp swaying in a corner, casting grotesque shadows against the wall. Beneath it lay a collection of scattered books, open as if inviting me to dive into their chaotic narratives. Suddenly, a shriek pierced through the air, distorted and haunting. It radiated from the depths of the library, causing my heart to stutter in my chest. The walls pulsed with the rhythm of something terrible awakening. "Help me!" Amanda's voice echoed again, woven into the cries of 1,000 lost souls. Her call pierced deep, a desperate wail filled with both sorrow and a sinister mirth. "You can't leave me." I was paralyzed, the familiar warmth of her voice fighting against the chill of horror that enveloped my spirit. My thoughts raced. Was she truly in danger? Or was this a treacherous ploy by the library, weaving illusions to ensnare me further? The sheer desperation in her call had me wavering at the threshold between fear and hope. A sudden crash erupted behind me, wooden shelves splintering as the librarian's laughter reverberated through the dim space. "You think her cries are genuine?" she mocked. "Her fate is sealed, just as yours will be if you linger here any longer." Amidst her derision, I caught a fleeting glimpse, the shadow of a figure darting past the corner of my vision, a glimmer of familiarity against the swirling darkness. "Amanda?" I gasped, dread pooling in my stomach as I turned toward the shadows once more. The flickering light of the lamp twisted in response, and for a brief moment, the entire library flickered like a dying star. As the light stabilized, I could see indistinct shapes swirling just beyond its reach, figures intertwined in anguish, their mournful expressions pleading for release. Nausea washed over me as I recalled the volume I had touched earlier, the overwhelming flood of consciousness pooling into my mind. Each spirit trapped within these pages seemed to claw for freedom, their despair a suffocating curtain wrapping around the air. In the midst of my terror, I felt a pull, a litany of urgency driving me toward the depths of those shadows. I had to know if she was in there, trapped among the others, or if she too had succumbed to the darkness. "Amanda!" I shouted into the blackness, half terrified of what might answer. The shadows writhed, responding with a chorus of mournful cries, as if my words had ignited a flurry of trapped spirits awakening from their stupor. Suddenly, a figure emerged, stepping from the gloom, silhouetted against the waning light. It was a woman cloaked in shadow, her form resembling Amanda but twisted and exaggerated, her features grotesque yet unmistakably hers. "Are you ready to join me?" Amanda asked, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "This is where we belong. Here, stories rewrite themselves. We can reclaim everything we lost." Her outstretched hand glimmered with an otherworldly aura, and in that moment, my blood turned to ice. All around her, the shadows convulsed, and whispers escalated into furious screams, a cacophony of rage that felt intent on devouring me whole. Without a second thought, I turned on my heel to run, but the darkness surged, swallowing me in a wave of chaotic despair. It twisted around my limbs, tightening its hold like a cocoon. Moments felt like an eternity as I fought against the instant grip of terror. "Fool!" the librarian taunted, her figure flickering in and out of sight, drawing nearer. "You can never escape your own story." In a desperate bid for freedom, I yanked a book from the ground, a delicate volume ornately embossed, and felt a surge of courage course through me. With all my might, I flung it behind me, releasing the weight of my despair. The moment it tore away from my grasp, the library shook, books crashing onto the floor as something within the walls howled in fury as I stumbled backward. I felt the grip on my heart tighten, a dark essence pulling at my very soul. The air turned frigid, and with dawning horror, I realized the shelves were closing in fast, and soon I would be lost to the tales that demanded more than just a reader. Then I heard it again, the plea for help, followed by mad laughter that echoed through the narrowing corridor. It rattled against my bones, leaving me breathless and cold. "Amanda!" I gasped, terror knotting my throat as I recognized my fate could mirror hers unless I found a way out. All that was left was an ominous choice: fight against the darkness threatening to swallow me, or succumb to the siren call of the very stories that entangled my fate. A flash of movement at the edge of my vision caught my attention, but when I turned to see, all I found was a fractured reflection of my own fear in the depths of the encroaching black. As I teetered on the brink of despair, I knew that whatever came next, my soul would never be the same, nor would my understanding of the world outside these cursed pages. The shadows roared again, and a familiar figure began to emerge, a twisted simulacrum of Amanda, her eyes glinting with an unholy hunger. "You're just in time for the final chapter," she hissed, her voice echoing with dread. And then the darkness swallowed me whole, leaving nothing but the remnants of my cries dancing in the void. The silence was palpable as I stood suspended in that suffocating darkness, my heart pounding frantically against my ribs. I could feel the sinister pull of the library's embrace tightening around me, the walls alive with the stories of tortured souls that whispered my name, begging for release while simultaneously threatening to swallow me whole. I was trapped in a loop of dread, torn between the familiar voice beckoning me from the shadows and the overwhelming instinct to flee. The grotesque figure that resembled Amanda approached slowly, her movements fluid yet predatory, each step echoing like a tolling bell in the depths of my mind. "You can't escape, you know?" she breathed, her breath curling around my skin like icy fingers. "This is where we belong, bound together by our despair, woven into the very fabric of these tales. You think you're different? You're a part of the story now, just like the rest." The shadows thickened around her, excited by her words, seething with a hunger that made my skin crawl. They swirled around her, coiling like serpents, lashing out towards me. There was no escaping the allure of their gripping pull, a ghastly temptation that felt both inviting and terrifying. My mind screamed warnings, but my body betrayed me, each nerve ending alive with a conflicting mix of fear and curiosity. "Amanda!" I cried again, desperation spilling over the edges of my resolve. "You have to fight. This isn't you." Her expression shifted momentarily, my friend flickered beneath the surface of that dark mirage. I caught a flash of hurt, a fleeting vulnerability that ignited a spark of hope within me. Perhaps there was a fragment of my Amanda still trapped in her torment, a shard of light buried deep beneath the malevolent urge that seemed to consume her. "Help me break free," she urged, her tone now softer yet laced with a chilling desire. "Together we can merge with the stories. Rule them, we'll never be alone again." The idea stirred a twisted excitement in my gut, but the horror around me screamed otherwise. I could hear the wail of the voices, tales of loss and vengeance intertwined with a potent longing that seemed to taunt my very existence. All around us, the books shifted as if possessed, their pages fluttering wildly, the air thickening with the raw energy of countless stories clamoring to be told. "No!" I shouted, summoning every ounce of will left in me. "This isn't who you are. We can leave this place. We can find each other again." The figure hesitated, the shadows shuddering and flickering as if thrown into disarray. But that moment was fleeting. Her expression warped back into a macabre grin, teeth sharp and glistening under the dim light. "You think you can save me? You're already lost. The stories want you. The walls echoed back her laughter, contractions of terror pulsating through the very stones as they began to undulate. I felt the remnants of my sanity trembling, fraying at the edges beneath the weight of her taunts. The revelation hit me. The library wasn't just a prison. It was alive, feeding off despair, constructing new narratives from the ashes of lost hopes. The tear in reality began to pulse with a blinding light, an exit shimmering just beyond reach as shadows clawed desperately at me. I had to act quickly, but the oppressive air turned thick, choking my resolve and feeding the panic that threatened to consume me whole. In a last-ditch effort, I lunged toward the glowing vortex, wrapping my fingers around an ancient tome nearby. Its spine cracked under my grip, and the energy surged through me like wildfire, a forbidden knowledge pulsing to life with the power of those who had come before. The library screamed, a cacophony of rage and sorrow intertwined, its collective fury mingling with the countless souls pleading for release. In that moment I understood. This was not just about escaping. It was about reclaiming. I would overturn the very essence of the stories that sought to bind me. "Amanda!" I shouted one last time, my voice raw with determination. "We can fight back. Together we can rewrite the ending." Her grotesque form hesitated again, her features flickering, and as I grasped the book with determination, I felt my heart thrumming in tune with the long-forgotten souls reaching for the light. Racing against time, I opened the tome, screaming the words etched within, harnessing the power of a new narrative, a rebellion against the darkness. At that moment, the shadows recoiled. The labyrinth of the library trembled violently, shelves groaning and splintering as the walls shuddered in response to the oldest incantation written in blood and fear. "No!" Amanda shrieked, her form distorting, stretching grotesquely as the shadows twisted around her, clawing at my only hope. "This is my story." And just as the bright light surged forward to consume us both, the walls shook violently, and a hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow passage that beckoned to me with a weight of unspeakable dread. I stood at the threshold, teetering between the decision to leap toward the light or succumb to the darkness that promised power and misunderstood companionship. But then I heard her again, a whisper amidst the chaos, straining to rise above the cacophony of the library. "Help me," she cried, now laced with sorrow and anger. "Choose wisely." Time froze as I balanced on the knife's edge of despair and desperation, and then the shadows began to close in, clawing at my heels, beckoning me to join them. Just when I thought I had made my choice, the very floor beneath me erupted, fissures splitting the ground, sending shards of wood and stone tumbling into the void. The passageway flickered and dimmed, replaced by the all-consuming darkness that surged forth, swallowing the possibility before me. And then a new scream echoed through the terror, one that sounded chillingly like my own. "No!" I howled, but it was too late. The darkness embraced me, dragging me into the depths of an unending night. Within that shroud, I felt all eyes turned toward me, trapped, watched, and waiting for what story I would weave next. And as the library sighed, I understood my fate. There would be no escape, only the binding tales of horror that would forever rewrite my story in the cold chambers of the damned. The stillness that followed my plunge into darkness felt eternal, a void stretching beyond comprehension. The library morphed around me, an infinite expanse of shadow and dread. I was not merely lost. I was part of a story now, woven into the very fabric of this haunted place, another twisted chapter in its sinister tome. The whispers swirled like malevolent smoke, curling through the air, wrapping around me with an icy familiarity. I felt their weight, stories long forgotten surfacing in my mind, memories entwining with the lost souls who sought redemption. Glancing toward the horizon of shadow, my heart raced as figures began to materialize, their faces gaunt yet pleading. Each bore the weight of sorrow, eyes filled with the desperation of those who craved an escape from this cycle of torment, unshackled yet still bound by fate. In the distance, amidst the shifting shadows, I recognized them, former friends, neighbors, people I once knew. The librarian led them, her face twisted into a mirthless smile. "Welcome to your new home," she sang, her voice a haunting lullaby that resonated through the void. "You've become one of us." But it was what she said next that chilled my blood. You weren't the first to be claimed, nor will you be the last. Now that you're here, every chapter of your life will be rewritten with us. It seeped into my core, the realization that the other innocent souls were not merely captured. They had surrendered willingly. The stories they carried whispered, begging for release, urging me to accept my fate. Desperation ignited a turbulent flame within me. I raged against my bonds, recollecting every memory that buoyed my spirit. Amanda, my childhood laughter, sunlight warming my skin, and moments of pure joy shared with friends who were now entangled in anguish. My instincts screamed that I was meant to be free, to break the cycle of repression, to escape the shadows grasping at my fragile will. Fight it! I yelled into the encompassing darkness, but the shadows hissed back, a chorus of agony responding to my defiance. They closed in, hungry tongues of darkness licking at my edges, urging me to succumb, tempting me with everything I could have if I chose to join them. Embrace your destiny. Become one with us. But that was when I heard her voice again, Amanda. It slipped through the dark, not tainted but clear and stern. Find your light. Fight, we can break this curse together. Within the core of that despair, I caught remnants of my friend, the vibrant spirit that had once radiated warmth and laughter, the one who had fought so valiantly to free me. And then, in a blinding realization, I understood the choice before me. These souls, drawn to the library, had been woven into its dark tapestry, their stories mingling and spiraling into an unending hollow. They lived for the moment someone might choose to become part of their narrative regardless of the cost. Air crackled with a potent energy, pushing against me, the threads of their tale grasping like vengeful vines as I took a step forward. I would not join them. I would rewrite my own story. Fueled by a strength born from love and memories, I hurled myself into the fray. The darkness recoiled momentarily, startled by my defiance, and I pushed through the tumult, grasping tight to the last vestiges of hope I could muster. Every footfall carried the weight of souls with me, of those who had cried out, whether in unison or alone. I summoned their whispers and wove them together, forming a shield of light around me that drove back the shadows tugging at my consciousness. Closer, I could see the radiant glow of a threshold, a doorway shimmering with pure light, a way out. The figures faltered, caught in the web of their own despair, while the librarian screeched, her voice draping the air in a bitter chill. You cannot escape us. But I would not stop. I wouldn't be silenced. With a final effort, I drew from the deepest well of courage and proclaimed, I choose my path. I am more than the stories you aspire to tell. In that instant, the library erupted, a maelstrom of light and shadow clashing in a cataclysmic symphony. I felt the tug of familiar faces slipping away, the longing pouring from them as they, too, rushed toward the light, yearning to rewrite their endings as I had. But just before I reached the threshold, I heard a familiar scream more heart-wrenching than it had ever been. Don't leave me. It was Amanda, the shadows swallowing her words, cloaking them in despair as they wrestled for her grip. Time stood still as the librarian's chilling laugh echoed. Look at what you've done. You leave her behind, for all eternity. The light behind me shimmered temptingly, and regret tightened around my heart like a vice, but I knew I couldn't go back. I hesitated, torn between the warmth of the light and the cold of the shadows. Just as I felt myself wavering, a spark ignited within me. I turned back to Amanda, my voice clear with conviction. I will return for you. Then I stepped into the light, crossing the threshold that would strip away the darkness clutched around me, promising rebirth. But as I exited, a terrible shriek echoed through me, a warning, or perhaps a proclamation. For as the warmth washed over me, illuminating my world anew, the shadows whispered with desperate rage, You think you escaped? It's never over. In that moment of clarity and relief, a chilling realization gripped my soul. I had forged my path but left Amanda stranded among the chains of despair, forever entwined with the stories that would herald horror until someone else answered the call. As I took a deep breath amidst the human world, sunlight streaming on my face, the whispering shadows clung closely to my mind. Their soft, seductive voices reverberated with terrible promise, echoing sinister thoughts I would never forget. And as I stepped into my new life, lingering in the back of my mind was a gut-wrenching truth: the library had not closed. It was merely waiting, biding time until it could rewrite the next chapter in my life, a haunting reminder that fate has a way of closing its grip sooner or later, and perhaps, somewhere beyond the veil, monsters still waited for the right moment to rekindle their darkness, just as I turned to embrace my liberation. A chilling thought clawed its way up through my consciousness, lingering in my heart like a specter echoing through my soul, a sinister reminder I would carry always. You can never fully escape what you have left behind.